Hi, welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, V.
And Sean, aka Lord Spew. We talk shop with other creatives in animation and comics about things like finding your artistic path or the process of making art while we doodle on magma.
We asked people on our social medias if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts. If you haven't yet, check out our Patreon and subscribe to our channel.
Today we have with us Alex Gamsu Jenkins. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Alex, I'm so excited for you to be here. I have been a fan of your comics for, I think, like a couple of years now. What started your artistic career for you? Was it more the animation, the comics, the illustration? Because you do so many different things.
So I started off. I started. I drew a lot when I was a young child, and then I took a big period of time off where I didn't draw anything for about 10 years. So all throughout my teenage years, and I was lost for a long time. I was kind of wondering what can I do with myself, and I worked lots of menial jobs. And then I did an art foundation course, and then I did an illustration course. And from there, I then went and got my first freelance job in illustration. And then it kind of led into comic making and then more into animation now. So that's what I'm currently doing, is trying to learn and get better at animation, which is a big challenge, but got to persevere.
What's the biggest challenge about it for you?
Oh, it's a whole science, I find, of animation. There's so much to learn, and there's so many different elements and laws. And I mean, you can do it however you want. There's complete freedom with it as well. But then I think it's good to know the basics and fundamentals before you go on.
The freedom is overwhelming.
Do you guys ever animate?
I animate, and V primarily you storyboard and do comics, right? V, you're not as much of an animator, yeah?
I went to school for animation, so I can, but it's not my favorite thing to do. And that's why I'm so surprised, Alex, that you're like, oh, animation was like so complex, because you post all these animations and I'm like, wow, he can do it all. Like
Very kind.
it looks just so fun because you do these you how would I describe them? It's almost like Russian dolls, like nesting dolls type of animation, where it's like a thing within a thing within a thing, which is like kind of like is also a theme that I see in a lot of your comics.
Yeah, well, what I find with different from animation to comics is I find, and illustration as well. I find when I animate, you can take a more straight ahead approach, and you can be a lot more abstract and just see where it leads. Well, before with say comic making it's not formulaic, but you plan things out a little bit more. And I find with animation, things don't have to make sense as much. You can just go from one shot to the next shot to the next shot and almost find the merge or the morph. And it doesn't necessarily have to make sense. Well, with the comics, I'm always trying to land on a twist or a punchline almost, you know?
That's really interesting that you're bringing that up, like the difference between like comics and animation, and how animation you feel like you have more of a it's more straight ahead. It's almost more like dream logic. Have you always kind of been drawn to like the surrealist type, like art form? Like, how did you kind of gravitate towards that specific kind of writing style and like, I guess, vibe in your work? Like, I'm trying to find the right word. You have like, because you have like, not only your drawing style is very specific, but the themes that you explore are also very on brand. Like you always kind of gravitate towards these existential, surrealist type of themes.
Yeah, I think I wish I had a better answer for this, but it's just the things that I gravitate towards naturally. And I remember when I was young, I really enjoyed a painting that was there's a big art gallery in London called the Tate Modern. And there's a painting by Giorgio de Chirico, and it's called what's the name of the painting? It's called Uncertainty of the Poet. And it's do you know Giorgio Kiroko's work?
Yeah, it's funny because he's one of the surrealists that doesn't usually get brought up because it's always Dali, Dali. But the
Right, he's
Kiriko,
like the
yeah,
main guy, right? Yeah,
yeah, he's kind of like the close runner-up. He does kind of things that almost look like theater play sets almost. The
exactly.
Kiriko.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and often there's a dream theme to it, and it has a you don't landscape. Yeah, almost like the like you said, like the theatre sets and mannequins appear a lot in his work as well. And it was just I remember seeing that when I was younger at the Tate Modern, and I remember things, certain paintings that really stick with you. And I think it's just the things that you're naturally more inclined towards follow
Hmm.
through in your work later on as you go on down the line. So I think it's not like I really intend to create work which is sort of dreamlike or surreal, but it's what I enjoy, and I just find myself going towards that every time.
It's funny because I feel like the feeling that you're describing about going into animation and how it's freeing and you're not constrained in certain ways and rules. I feel like that's how V talks about going into comics from animation,
Ah,
which is
really?
like
Yeah.
because you storyboard and you're so constrained to like the rules of time and making the poses, in
Hmm.
between shots line up for continuity, and but with comics you can kind of skip around and be abstract and like. And I think that's funny because I feel like I've heard similar sentiments on the reverse, said by V.
You made
That's
me reevaluate everything. I think I'm going to go back into comic making now and just abandon my animation plans.
You're like, I gotta get
But
away from animation. It's too
yeah, no,
constricting,
no,
and get back
yeah.
to.
I know what you mean. I mean, it's incredibly time consuming, and it
That
can
too.
be laborious as well, right? I mean, thinking, it's 24 drawings per second, or can be
yeah.
less, but there's so much work that it you have to take on with it.
Yeah, it's the
But
main
I think I like that.
reason that I'm
Yeah. Well, is that the reason that you're going more into comic making? You feel like
yeah, because
you
I'm
just
I'm too lazy for all the drawings. That's why I'm like I'm always like so admirative of people who can like especially with the level of detail in rendering that there is in your animations. You know what I mean? It's not just like anatomically correct esque characters. There's gradients and everything. Um,
It's a lot to keep track
I
of.
guess well, I guess the best way to do it is to be flexible to do all three. Kind of cross between paths of illustration, animation,
mhm.
and comic making, depending on how you feel at the time and what's best
Sure.
suited for the idea itself.
Yeah.
And oh, go ahead, Sean.
I don't know. I was gonna say, for a little while, I was dabbling in motion comics and having like a comic, and every page was doing a little bit of a loop. Like even just having like a rain loop on one of the panels, I felt was really eye catching. But
I did.
yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I was also considering that, and I went to do it, and I thought I could just make the static, and still it'd just be so much quicker. Just didn't get around
Well,
to it.
yes, quicker is. I think that this was the
Yeah.
time of during Tumblr. I realized that like, oh, like if there's like just a little thing to grab people's attention extra, like I could make a GIF of the page and whatever. But no, I totally time wise that very much makes sense.
Sean, do you still make comics?
It's been a while since I made comics. I've made short form comics here and there. I've done like a few zines, like comic zines, but I haven't done like a longer form or ongoing comic. Where comics the closest thing I do to comics is I storyboard as a profession. So that's like it's not quite comics, but it's I can sympathize with comic artists. Like
And in a way, you could classify that as a comic, but it's not quite
a
officially.
little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And how do you do your animation? Are you working on a project at the moment, or?
I'm in between a few things. Right now, I'm working with the Studio Digital,
Okay.
and I'm making a few 30-second shorts that and usually what I end up doing is kind of getting involved in projects where I can pitch the cartoon and it's in my style, and I write it and I voice it and I animate it and I do it all the way through soup to nuts, and then that's sort of the thing. So whether that's like making like Adult Swim smalls or shorts, or trying to find things for a Studio Digital, I that's the lane that is probably my favorite thing, other than like, I don't know, getting a steady job on a show is always nice, but it's if I think if I had my choice, I would be drawing in my own style, using my own voice, things like that.
You've made
I,
it.
I
Have you
oh, sorry.
made some of those, Alex? I feel like you've made a
No,
studio.
I've seen them. I've done one that's a similar one, but I've always wanted to do with is it I call it AS Studio Digital. Is that the right way to say it? Or
A
AS Studio Digital?
a studio digital. I don't know if they have a preference, but yeah, I
Right.
mean that's how I've always said it. Yeah.
Which one
I've
did
seen it,
you
and
do, Alex? Because I remember you did like some shorts for one of these platforms.
I've seen a Studio Digital, and they look great, and I feel like they give you a lot of creative freedom. It's pretty much you can do what you want for them, right? I'd imagine, Sean.
Pretty much, yeah. You pitch them your idea, and I think over the years there's been a bunch of iterations, and in different studios will do this thing where they're like, basically we want to highlight different artists, almost like liquid television. Like, we'll have different artists in different styles, and we'll have a bunch of different artists, and a bunch of the shorts that we post are from different artists, but they're for us. And there's been different studios over the years, from like Fox ADHD to Cartoona to kind of like the bumpers that people can get, the bumper interstitial work for like Adult Swim, or the ID ads for I think Comedy Central has done stuff like that. It's kind of like pitching an idea, and then following through on the idea, and it's like, hey, this is my style, and I'm pitching myself as like a, whatever. And I do like that kind of work. I do find it to be a little bit rare.
Hmm.
It's hard to find, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, you feel well, I've always found that, the jobs that pay really well are often the jobs that you have like the least creative control over. But you have to bite the bullet with those, and surrender your sounds bad saying like surrender your imagination, but you have to suit the client's needs. But they're the things that allow you to continue with what you're doing.
Somebody who's like a style as like specific as yours, Alex, how do you kind of like go about handling client work? Like can you kind of like describe for the audience kind of what that looks like between the moment that you get like the email, like how do you get the job, and then kind of how do you go through the different steps of like working with a client?
So I got some good advice. So when I was at college, we say university in the UK, same thing, right?
Yeah.
But when I was in my final year, I got some advice off another illustrator, and he said to just send out. He was like a few years ahead of me, but he said just like get in touch with people in the industry, like don't hesitate to do it. And I followed through on that, and I did it in my final year before I graduated, and it worked. I mean, I sent out like hundreds of emails, and I didn't get many responses. But I think with my style, I felt like I had to really like push the boat out to find the people who are willing to work with me. Because I feel like my stuff is kind of close to the bone, or a little bit macabre. It can be. It
Hmm.
can be.
Yeah.
I mean, in my early work as well was very like, well, badly drawn for a start, but also very no, like bogies, and and snot and stuff like that. It was a
Hmm.
bit like crude, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
So it was hard. I knew it would be difficult to find work in it. So I knew that
Hmm.
I had to really like get in touch with people and find, be the person who makes that initial contact. So then people can make art
Hmm.
directors can then make the decision and be like, okay, we want to work with you, so we'll take the gamble. And
Oh.
luckily, a few did, so it got me going in it then.
Well, what's it been like to? I mean, so now I'm assuming you're getting more work in animation. I feel like there are a few different types of paths in animation. One of those paths is being somebody who can adapt to any style and get work on different shows, and you're a chameleon. But it does seem like you are a person with a very strong personal style, and I'm wondering how that's affected freelance that you take, like, this job doesn't give me enough creative freedom? Like, is that something that you think about?
Yeah, I felt that. I think well, so far since I've been doing animation, everything I've done has relatively been in my own style because I've been the director on the job.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So far, I haven't had to work with someone else's style and try and adapt my work around that. I don't know how good I'd be because I feel like I am very much like set in a certain way of how I draw.
Hmm.
You know, you almost get so set in your muscle memory of your drawings. I
Mhm.
don't know. I'm not. I'll be the most adaptable artist to be able to pick up someone else's work and try to see through a job of that. I'll be open to trying it though, definitely. But yeah, I think it's more at the moment. It's it's jobs that I take on. It's still my work, but then it's just small changes that I have to make depending on
Mhm.
client needs, like taking away those kind of grotesque
Yeah.
qualities or
If you had to make a little bit of a pie chart of how you make a living, support yourself with art, like what percentage of that is client work or merch or animation or comics? Like, how would you say you divide your time making a living as an artist?
I'd say 80% of my income would be through client work. And I've found that's more recently is through animation work that comes through. That'd be a commercial job.
Mhm.
Merch, I'm really bad at that. Like my girlfriend, she regulates my shop and does everything for me, but otherwise my brain's all over the place. Like I would not be able to keep up a shop in any way. I mean, she's got her own life and everything to do and her own job, but I think she pities me. She sees me sinking in the ocean, and she feels like, right, I've got to bail him out quickly and like help him earn some money. I'm not. I think I'm a sort of charity case in that sense.
That's funny.
It's funny because I do feel like the a lot of like the online conversation about like shopkeeping and like
Yeah.
sending out everything is more kind of like a female conversation. I feel like it's a lot more women that do like the online shop somehow.
Yeah, I
It's
think we're
really funny.
yeah quite like a set on organized brain that can know what's going on. Otherwise, I'll just be no, I'm swimming. I'm in panic mode.
Panic. Do you do you work mostly with like so when you're directing an animated work for like an ad campaign or whatever, do you usually is it just yourself or do you usually go through a studio? Like how does that kind of like work? Because I know sometimes people are just kind of like they're like a director attached to like a like an ad agency type of studio. What's how are you handling that?
Yeah, so initially I was completely freelance, but now I'm with a company called an animation production company called Strange Beast, who are
Mm.
based in London, and they're part of Passion.
Oh, very cool.
So yeah, Passion they more also in live action and film, but Strange Beast is more their the branch of them, which is well animation, but more 2D animation as well.
Mm.
So I'm with those now. So then, usually if it's a big job that will come through, or working a bigger budget, say, or working with a longer time frame in terms of the length of the animation, then with them they'll source a crew for me, and then we'll go from there,
Oh, that's
and I'll be working
amazing.
with them.
It's like
That's super sick. Yeah, how did you get in touch with them? Because you weren't always with them. Like, did they reach out to you? How was that process
They did,
like?
yeah. They got. I did a talk called It's Nice That, which is it's a publication in the UK, and it's all about like illustration, graphic design,
Hmm.
animation. It covers all the fields, and they do a talk called Nicer Tuesdays. So I did a Nicer Tuesdays, which is like a 10-minute talk you do up on stage, and I
Hmm.
think a couple of the guys were there from Strange Beast at the same time. Then they emailed me like a week after and said, "Oh, um, would you be interested in doing animation?" And then I didn't speak to them for ages. No, 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 no. I think they blocked and deleted me. No, no, no. I just there was no opportunity to like kind of get in touch. And then I had a job come through. No, someone approached me, and I'd never done any kind of directing work before.
Mm.
So I thought like, shit, I need to. How am I going to do this? So then like I contacted Strange Beast, and I said that I've got this, blah blah blah, and then they took care of me, and it went from there.
Oh,
And then we just
it's
worked
awesome.
together more and more.
that's so cool. So it's almost like they're almost like a manager for you, double with like a studio. So like do you feel like you come to them with the work that you're getting from your online cloud, or would you say that French Beast also brings you a lot of work? Like how would you kind of what's how much is from you, how much is from them?
I'd say it's a 50-50 split each
Oh,
way.
nice.
Like we both do it for each other. But I have to say, the last 2 years, it's been very barren from both ends because I think well, I imagine, is it for you guys too? But is everything slowed down because of everything that's
It's
going on in the
Yes.
world?
It's
Yeah,
so
Yeah.
100%.
interesting. I was wondering because Sean and I were more in the entertainment, like TV sphere. So I'm kind of removed from the more like commercial advertisement world. And I'm actually so surprised that you guys would be hit as well. Because
Yeah.
I thought advertising was gonna be like
You're
all the
safe.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are safe. You're not at the studios. You're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. No,
That's
I think
Everybody's
everyone's
hit.
been here. Not even in the creative world. I think
Gotcha.
just all over. And I
oh,
think
that's
because it's
crazy.
a creative job, is that clients aren't willing to part as much of their budget, I guess, and that leads on to less all round for everyone.
Yeah, that's so
Patches of
interesting.
dryness.
But that makes sense though. I feel like yeah, like everybody, all the budgets are getting tighter and it's yeah, it's not just for the big studio. That oh my God. That's really interesting. I feel like things are I mean, it obviously always comes in waves. Have you ever experienced something like that before in your career? I'm asking because in like Hollywood, when we talk about like how about like the drought of jobs that is happening right now, people who've been in the industry for like 20, 25 years are like, we've been through this before. Like this has happened before. Have you ever experienced something like that in your career before?
Okay, no, so that sounds quite reassuring, but I haven't, no, because I graduated in 2015, and well, I've been freelancing since then, and so far up until the last 2 years, it's almost felt like it peaked, and now
Hmm.
it's got to the top of the peak, and I'm speed rolling down the hill, in a bad way, not in a good sense.
I like to hear the way you describe your emotions because now I'm like, okay, the comics make sense. It's like a
Speed
very
rolling down the
composed.
hill.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
a very composed, yet very kind of intense
yeah. But
description.
hopefully you can picture it.
Yeah, just like
Yeah,
in a very calm voice. I'm fighting for my life.
yeah.
Tumbling into the volcano, and then it's gonna erupt me out. I'm gonna get melted alive, and you're
Yeah,
just like very calmly talking about it.
yeah.
It's so funny. Oh my God. Yeah, I want to also kind of talk a little bit also about the beginning of your career. We kind of like brushed on it
You
earlier,
just
but
skipped ahead.
we just kind of skipped ahead. Yeah, I want to kind of because so you talked about this teacher who was like, yeah, just reach out to everybody. For people who are listening and who don't know who to reach out to, where to reach out, like what was your personal strategy? How did you go about sending out emails? Who did you like? How did you
Give us one
pick?
artist that everyone should reach out to right now. Everyone's sending
No.
them
Yeah, right now. Okay, yeah, bombard him. Just send them emails, everyone. Get on it. Yeah, no. So the strategy that I took is my inner secret. So you're count yourself lucky you're learning the innards. But I think it's very standard. Where everyone probably does this as well. But the way that I did it was so actually no. When I graduated 2015, so magazines was still a thing. So now
Mhm.
it's a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
But what I'd do, I'd find a search engine and I would try and collate as many names of publications, magazines, websites,
Mhm.
and really try and like rack my brain and try and figure out, and try and list as many, yeah, of those as much as I possibly could, and
Mhm.
just try and think outside the box of it and just try and get the list as big as possible.
Mhm.
And then with each publication, etc., that you have, then try and locate the art director of that. And then you have to stalk them online and find out every detail about them. So what I do, I'd often find myself, I was arrested a few times
No
because of,
way.
yeah, because they had, they put me in one of the people went into witness protection because I wouldn't leave them alone. No, no, no. So what I did,
Stop. I
yeah,
I
no,
like this.
no,
No, V is not able to parse reality versus your very calm storytelling. No, no,
feel
no.
like this
That is
gotta
very
be a
funny.
bit, but I
Yeah,
don't know yet.
I show up on
no,
their
no.
dog walking route, and I'm like,
Yeah, just sort of
man,
peeking through the undergrowth.
what a
No, no. So
beautiful
what?
day to be hiring an animator,
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly. Yeah. No, no, no. So then what I do, so it is kind of stalking, but it's not in a sinister way. So you just
Not
get
in
the
a
details.
sense.
So Yeah, so you get the contact details, the name, and you make an Excel spreadsheet or what's
Hmm.
the Apple version of that? Is it called Numbers? Numbers
Oh,
version,
really?
if you want.
That's
Hmm.
funny.
Create a spreadsheet, list everything down, and then once you've got all the details down of like well, the main things is name and email. Just keep getting in contact with those people. Send out an email, introduce your work. And I found that with the email itself, you don't want to be. I think it was always helpful to try and make the email a bit more personal to that person. I think if it seems like it's very generic,
Yeah.
people are gonna overlook it very quickly.
Yeah, you're like,
So
yo,
try
yo,
and
yo, what the fuck is up?
yeah,
What are you
exactly.
listening to now? Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
But no,
I
I
feel
mean,
that.
do that. They'll be super detailed with it. Yeah. And just say that less stuff there.
Send them your Spotify Wrapped and
I do think
Yeah,
that's really
yeah,
interesting what you're bringing up, Alex, because that sounds a lot like what in animation or like in Hollywood people make you do when you meet execs, which is called a general, and you have like 15 to 30 minutes to kind of introduce yourself for the exec and you to kind of form some sort of a bond that like
yeah.
then they're excited to talk to you again, except you're doing it in an email, which is harder because it's like they you have a lot of the like when you're on in a meeting, there's like your face and like the like a lot of like other nonverbal cues that you can, I don't know, that can kind
Rely
of,
on, right?
yeah, exactly. But like, so for the email, that's kind of like almost, uh, well, how, if you compare it to a college application, how much more informal.
Well, that's it. I mean, you got to make it count. I think it's the key is to have a selection of your work and try put in your best pieces.
Hmm.
That's what I did at the beginning. Actually, I would try and I'd attach loads of images to the email, and I don't think that was necessarily the right way to do it. Now, we even just have a link.
Mm.
Well, saying that, I think it's finding a balance between holding the art director's attention, maybe having one image and also having a link to your website too. So find a balance with that. And
Hmm.
then if they're interested, then they can refer to the link that you provide and look up your work further from there.
No, that's great. I think that's great to hear because first of all, we haven't really heard that on the podcast yet, and I think doing like that for because a lot of the advice and stories we've heard on the podcast is like just post every day on social media and eventually somebody's going to notice you, but I like that you went out of your way to kind of put your work in front
Mhm.
of people's eyes because me when I found out about your work through social media, so I thought you were kind of like part of that like first generation of social media artists that were like kind of like I'm just going to post every day, whatever. How important do you think your social media presence is for your career?
Yeah, it's been really helpful for me. I think I can't imagine how it was for those before without it. How did the industry work in terms of like getting in touch with people or getting your work out there and seen? It must have been a completely different landscape. So I don't envy those in that position. I'm pleased that there is a way now that you can really quickly just get your work out there to the world.
Yeah.
So it has been great for me. I think I was also quite lucky. Some people get lucky, I think, with social media where their accounts just blow up,
Hmm.
and I think I was one of those where I think there's so many deserving artists out there who deserve that recognition, but for some reason, maybe a little bit undeserved. But mine, I managed to get like a big following, but I'm very pleased about that as well.
Yeah. When did
You know,
You're so
when did that
humble.
start?
You're so humble. Yeah, what's
Uh,
your big your what would you say is your viral piece?
oh, I think
Or the
I did a
catalyst that
job for
started it all? Yeah.
yeah, I did a job for Vice,
Mm.
and it was what was it about? Something about condoms or something that's slightly crude in nature. And
Hmm.
then I did an illustration for that, and then I remember it got like a big reaction then, and I remember being like, "Oh, this is interesting." I'm sold by the orange icon that keeps flashing up on my phone, and from that day forward, I sold my soul and you know looked for the fountain of virality.
Oh my God, it's so true though. It's like social media is like I both love it and like also sometimes I'm like I wish I would never have to use it ever again because it's so time consuming. Was it an illustration? Was it a comic that you did for Vice?
No, it was illustrated. It was an editorial illustration,
Mm.
at the time. Yeah.
Do you still do a lot of those?
I do. Yeah. I mean, occasionally they do come when I do them, but nowadays I think it's more like where you put your work out there, work will come to you. And at the moment, I feel the work that I do get, maybe it's more in line of animation because I'm just sort of getting started in it, and it's more that if it's either comics or animation, I don't really make money off the comics.
Yeah.
So if I do make a living, it's usually just through that and not so much editorial illustration now. Well, at the very beginning, it was all editorial illustration because that's what I was looking for. And
Hmm.
maybe I was just doing singular illustration at that point as well.
How has social media been as far as a tool that helps you keep going and keep making things? Like, did you use it as a way to like push yourself to like draw a thing every day? Were you doing that anyway? Were you know like how did it especially when things started popping off for you? Like what's your relationship with drawing and social media? I guess I should say.
Yeah, I think it worked really well for me actually because I feel like my work has always been a little bit scatty and a bit like quick, like quick fire. You know, just get stuff out there as fast as possible onto the next idea. And in a way that really suited me with that. So it's almost like, you know, when I always had it like it wasn't so much like I set a law in or a rule to myself where it would be like, okay, I'm going to do like a drawing a day thing, but it kind of worked out like that anyway, where you're just trying to churn out as much as possible. When it I enjoyed that and it suited me and it worked out.
Yeah, it's very true. I do feel like social media works well for people who are like very like more driven by smaller projects just because of like the nature of the medium, like how much time and or panels you get per update and how regularly like the algorithm kind of favors like the posts.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I was speaking to someone recently and they were working on a short for 6 years. And I think that they felt that they were, you know, that the world was going by past
Yeah.
them and they're missing out. But then I guess that for them though, that they at the end of the 6 years when they've completed their work, they've created something like incredible.
Yeah.
Where I've just been like, you know, doing something day to day, and I'm like, is this all I've got for like 10 years of work? I've just drawn fingers with eyes. I don't know.
It's
Just
funny
my
that you
life's
say
work,
10
that
years.
you
because
know.
your page is so well curated. You have a very strong style. When I go on your page, I feel like this is a body of works. Like it doesn't feel like it's just
Thank
like
you. I'll take
something
that. Yeah, yeah.
like it feels curated. Like so you're very for anybody listening, go check out Alex's Instagram page right now so you can understand how much he's underselling himself.
Yeah, we're geeking
Um
out and glazing him, and you
Yeah.
know, he's got a very cool Instagram page full of fingers and
Eyes.
faces that are a little scared and eyes and
Yeah.
I want
I'm
to
your man. If you want that, you know,
yeah.
that's what you need. Come to me.
How do you kind of what's your because so you said you don't make money with comics, right? But you still do post a lot of them. How do you kind of schedule that, I guess, in your work day, in your work week? Do you consider comics to be your hobby? Like what's
I
your
do it.
relationship with that?
Yeah, the way that I work is it all just depends on the idea. So whatever, there's no real structure to how I put stuff out there. It's
Mm,
just how I think the most challenging part for me is just trying to think of ideas
mm.
and trying to think of something that's clicked because you feel like you think up a lot of duds. And then when it comes to the one you're like, okay, no, I could pursue this one. This could be all right. And then you'd be like, okay, so what will it work best as? Will it be best as? Can I expand it a little bit? Can I make it? You know, will it be? Is it going to have like really slow time into it, which would be best suited for an animation? Which
Mhm.
or would it be best suited for like a 9 panel comic? Because the comics I do are always that kind of web comic format anyway.
Mhm.
It just all depends on like what the idea is, and I find that's it's the challenging thing is just thinking of ideas all the time.
Do you and yeah, and how do you kind of like keep track of your ideas? Are you like someone that like tends to write it down? Is it all in your head? Like what's your kind of process for like yeah, keeping like coming up with ideas and also kind of sorting through like you said the duds and the good ones and like
Yeah, the way that I've always done it is via sketching. So
Mm.
I, I have a few here
Ooh.
that are yeah. So it would just be like just trying to go through all the time, just trying to. I mean, everyone has a very similar sort of standard
Mhm.
sketchbook, right? And then when you feel like stuff's working, then I'll turn the page and just try and push it a little bit more.
Mhm.
You know, I forgot what the question was. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because so for people who are listening, you haven't seen the sketchbook that Alex showed us, but it's full of drawings. So you don't really write it down with words.
Oh yeah,
You're more of a like uh
yeah. That drawer. Yeah, that's it. I
mhm,
think everything I do, I'd love to be able to take that approach with writing first, and I do say to myself that I'm going to do it one day. I'm going to
mhm.
try and initiate it by writing something, but I always go back to like what I'm used to, and maybe I need to push myself more with that and try the writing approach first, or even if it's writing something which is a lot more longer format,
That's
maybe it would
funny.
open up the creativity a little bit more by stepping into something new.
No, but I think that kind of makes sense though, in that because the kind of stuff that you draw, I don't think you ever write speech bubbles, right? In your comics. It's always just silent.
Yeah, that's it. It's
Hmm.
always no dialogue at all, so it's just I have no explanation for that why I do it. I think I just like it. Maybe that it's impactful with what you see. So it can just be communicated by what's there
Yeah,
in terms of the illustration, as opposed to like relying on text.
I agree.
Have you
Yeah, and it
been? Oh, I'm
oh
sorry.
go ahead, Sean.
No, I was just gonna ask it. Have you been thrust into any situations where you're in the habit of not having dialogue, and then you have to come up with some dialogue for a job or whatever, and have you felt like out of your element?
There've been times where you really want to be able to like execute the idea, and you feel like there's no other way that you could do it unless there is dialogue, and you have to try and figure out a way of getting around that. And sometimes there is, maybe you have like a billboard with like the explanation on there, so it's kind of there is technically like the characters aren't talking, but
Okay.
there is some writing in there. In terms of jobs, no, I've always been all right. There was one job I did once where there was with voice actors, and that was the first time I'd ever done that, and I think I'd like to do that more.
Oh, what was that experience like for you working with voice actors for the first time?
Yeah, I didn't really work with them hands on. It was more like the audio was sent back and then it was
Okay.
placed over the top of the animation, so it wasn't so like day to day working with them.
Hmm.
But I'd definitely be open to doing that more in the future.
Yeah, that's fun. I feel like that was something that was like very that I'm still personally like learning working with voice actors because it's like something that is really exciting and fun, but also it's like so easy to overstep sometimes as like, like giving line reads or stuff like that. It's really fun to be in that room with the actors.
Yeah, I can imagine, right? And they're all, I'd imagine, very talented as well. It's
Hmm.
imagine to being able to like get across with what you want through voice acting. It's a huge skill in itself, right?
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, it's such a different skill from drawing,
Hmm.
like performing.
Well, I think that a lot of what we do can potentially feel isolating. You're working on a project for a long time
Hmm.
and you may have a team, you may not have a team. But especially right now where a lot of work is done remotely, working with a voice actor ends up being this like kind of collaborative moment where you feel like you're not alone because you're working with this person who's adding a certain thing to it sometimes. And that's kind of nice.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it must be, like you said, a complete contrast to the norm. Working with Norm,
Uh,
if there is a voice actor called Norm, who knows?
let's see. I kind of wanted to also ask you, do you have like any kind of schedule that you keep for yourself for the way that you post on social media? Or are you just kind of like, are you more kind of like, well, whenever the inspiration strikes, that's when I'll post or like,
Yeah, definitely that. I think it's a case of yeah, when I feel like there's something worth
Mhm.
doing, I'll do it. And you do it. I know I did say before that you do end up with a lot of duds, but sometimes those duds, I feel like if you what seems like a dud at the time, if you revisit it weeks or months later, you can
Yeah.
see it in a different light, and you can breathe new life back into it, depending on your mindset at that moment. So don't never give up.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh my God. How often do you feel like that happens for you? Like that you're like, oh, actually, that old idea I didn't like now. I can make it work.
I found more recently, sometimes I go through periods where I feel like my motivation dips a lot,
Yeah.
and then
Hmm.
I find that there's points where I'll start something, even if I like the idea and I'll start it and then I'll give up. But then even if it's a job that's half finished, coming back to that as well, I feel like that's something I do a lot where just give that put it down, get on to something else for the day, and then you can always come back to it, and you can have a few things going at once instead of just
Hmm.
having all your sole focus on one thing. That can
Yeah.
work. Would it be the same for you guys?
That's happened to me a lot in the comic actually. Sometimes
Yeah.
I think of a joke that I really like and it just doesn't work in the comic right now. And sometimes I'm like, actually, I have to let go of that joke and I'll never put it in. And then it turns up in the comic like pages and pages after, and I'm like, oh my God, now
Yeah.
is the right time. Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
funny, yeah, because you have to have faith that it will work in a way. Because sometimes I'm like, it feels very, I don't know for you guys, but I'm like, for me, it feels very like all or nothing. It's like I gotta make it work. It's gotta fit it in, and if it doesn't, it's like in the bin forever. And
Yeah.
then I
That's it. Yeah. And you sometimes feel like you lose almost like you lose your sense of judgment. Like I felt like
hmm
before when I used to work, I was a lot more. I don't know. I would just go for it, and then there's periods or points where I start to like question it. Is this even funny or is this worth doing? I don't know. I feel like maybe as you get older, you start to like question everything a bit more. It's
hmm
like you lose that kind of youthful, carefree nature that you once had.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like I've started to like at first it was hard to cut things because I felt like they were getting lost forever, and then I started going through this phase of like, hey, I'm cutting it out of here, but it could come back at another time. A different character could say that in a different cartoon. I can, I'll save that in a sketchbook. I could put that into a comic someday, and it turns into like me hoarding ideas that like they might not even be that strong, but I'm like, 5 years later, I'm like, oh, what if I take this thing, and try to pitch it in something else? And I've done that before. I've pitched like a song to like several different companies in different projects just to see if I can like use it in something, and sometimes it works. Sometimes like 5 years later you find a place for it, you find a home for it. But I do feel like a little bit of a joke hoarder.
Yeah, I mean, well, I suppose if these are all your creations, so you got to
Mhm.
nurture them and pour water down their gullets.
Yeah.
Never give up on them, never abandon them. One day they will grow their wings and drop fall to earth.
Yeah, they're all my special little children that are all equally funny and and
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
not
Yeah,
bad jokes.
I do
no,
feel
that's it.
I do feel the like because I'm like kind of going off what like Alex, you were talking about like the self-editing part that like becomes a little bit more prevalent as you get older. I've kind of noticed that like making of like a long form comic, I have started really analyzing my work in a way that I didn't really do before, and it's really helped me get better at making quick decisions. Whereas before, I would kind of like really labor over like the rhythm and of a comic, or like I wouldn't really understand why something worked or why it didn't. And like making a lot of work and like going back and analyzing it, it's helped me a lot. Becoming more intuitive, if that makes sense.
Sounds like you've evolved, and I'm at that point where you're just laboring, and thinking things over too much. So I need to get to where you're at,
I
where it
thought
is
that
just
you
like,
had your own formula down because I feel like there, when I look at
oh
your,
well.
no, you don't. You're still kind of, that's so funny.
No, I think I'm still like, well, it comes in waves, I think. Sometimes you feel
Yeah.
like you're doing all right, and then sometimes like, oh, I'm back. I've got my mojo back. I'm good to go. And then, like, 3 days later, I'm like, oh, this is it. It's the end.
It's the
I need
end.
to find a new job.
Have you
Yeah.
often considered switching careers?
Only when I didn't get work for ages, but not switching careers. No, it wasn't so much, it wasn't that dramatic. It was more like, oh, well, I need to get another job just to kind of, help me out financially.
Oh, I see, I see, I see. Oh, I thought you meant you were like, I'm done as an artist.
No, no, no,
Like,
no. I never have been. No, no, no. Don't. Sometimes, no. I find that I go to the toilet at night when I can't sleep, and I think that I'd be like, is this actually my job? No. Well, it's like what I said about doing the fingers with the eyes, and I'd be like, but then by the time I get back to bed, I'd be like, I get to use my imagination and create it and make a living out of it. So I'm on the right track.
Mm.
You
Do you
go through
ever
a mini crisis on your way to the toilet at night.
do you ever get burnt? I've been feeling burnt out a little bit on the kind of like on the short form things because I feel like I have to start over and over and over and over again with like short ideas instead of getting to come up with like an idea and like dwell on that for a little bit longer. Do you ever feel that way as somebody who makes a lot of short form comics with maybe like one off characters or
Yeah, definitely. That makes total sense. I think there is that where it is that need to be constantly starting again. And I think by the 10th time or in say like 2 weeks, I think you can really feel like that constant, cycle. It can take it out of you, and I feel like you can lose your push.
do you have
That makes sense.
do you have characters that you revisit in your comics much?
No, I've always done it like the way I've always done it is it's a new scenario every time, so it's a new situation. But I would love to do that at one point, is do something which is more longer form, or it's like a continuing story. It'd just be a different method of working. But I'd
Sure.
love to give it a go. Is that what you do more? Would you say B, or would that be what you
I
do,
think
Sean? Continuous characters.
I feel like I started doing my current comic because I was just like I wanted to get better at writing was kind of what it was. I was like I wanna get better at writing characters because I did mostly short form stuff before, and a lot of the stuff that I did was very kind of like evocative, but it wasn't. I didn't really do stuff that was structured in a more kind of like sitcom type of like typical entertainment, like TV type entertainment before. So I was like, okay, I need to get better at that. And then actually it turned out to be a lot of fun and I enjoyed doing it a lot. But I
Yeah,
mean, it is also hard because when you're doing something that's kind of like sitcom-esque, it becomes a little bit of what you guys were talking about, where it's like you have to keep coming up with new small ideas, except there are
Mm.
more rules.
But
yeah,
they're recurring characters who have
Yes,
something that's constant.
yeah.
exactly.
That's
So it's
true.
kind of like, how do they say it? They say you want something that's new but the same, like when
Oh, okay.
like that kind of a thing, or like because the
Mm-hmm.
audience gets excited to see the same characters again, and they have to do something that's similar enough to the stuff that they've done in the past there's like comfort, but it's got to be new enough that it's exciting and not boring
Yeah,
because it can get repetitive very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean everything can, right? Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I I feel like I'm coming off of the first thing that I've done in a long time that is longer form, having just come off of making a web series. But before that, I was really feeling like I was like all my drawings that I do on social media are like one-off jokes or one-off ideas with one-off characters. All the shorts that I'm doing are like 30-second shorts with characters that you never see again. And I felt like I was on in this loop of constantly like coming up with ideas that I was excited about and characters that I was excited about, and then being like, okay, now never to work on that little thing again.
yeah.
And sometimes it can be hard to start over a lot. So I was curious if you had felt any of that.
It sounds what you just said there, Sean. The way that you've done things in the past is like I feel like that's a similar way to I do it. Where is that
Hmm.
I'd like to do what you've recently done, where you felt like it's become a bit more of a longer commitment. And when will the web series be out?
Oh, it's out right now. I made a web series for Adult Swim called Bodyhead, and it's out on YouTube. And V also made a web series called High Moon Queen, and that felt it felt good to have
Mhm.
characters that like people could get attached to and immersed in and like draw fan art of, or like because I was thinking about this, and I don't know if this is something that everybody thinks about, but I was like, if someone, I mean, I don't know if this is an ego thing or narcissistic or anything, but like I was like, if I were to, or if someone else were to like draw a classic Lord Spew character that's their favorite one, I was like, what would they draw? And then I realized that I kind of blanked. I was like because I don't have that as many characters that I revisit. I was like, do I have like I don't know OCs that I come back to and I draw all the time and I don't really like and the ones that I do oftentimes are owned by other companies that I collaborate with. So I was like,
Yeah.
man, like that
Do I
feels
have the
weird.
legality to be able to do it? Yeah.
I was like, that feels weird. I feel like I have to change that
I
because
was
I yeah.
wondering because you're bringing up Sean the like the characters like the typical character, and I feel like for you, Alex, you do have a very specific type of characters that you draw a lot. They're not always the
Mm-hmm.
same character, but they're kind of like your what you would call it, like kind of like your actor, like as if your character was an actor that you kind of put
Yeah.
in different situations all
Sort
the
of
time.
bland and generic, I'd say.
No, I wouldn't say that.
No,
Wow.
it's like an avatar
No.
that you can cast relatability onto, like a
I
blank
think
canvas.
about it more like
Yeah,
kind
there
of
you go.
like
Yeah.
you know Commedia dell'arte, how they have like a couple of tropes, and they're never exactly the same character, but they always kind of embody the same.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
You know
it
what
can
I mean?
even be like something in the expression, or
Yeah.
there's
Yeah,
a similar characteristic about the
yeah,
whoever it is, the
because
protagonist in there. Yeah,
I do feel like your characters have this thing where it's like, and I don't know if I don't know if it's because of like this, like the pink skin and like the like very not a lot of facial features that make it feel very universal. Like I feel like that's
yeah, there
something.
is.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, yeah, no, there is definitely that. Like you said, like the pink skin or I find also like the hairless often. It is.
Yes.
It's almost like the character becomes moldable,
Mm-hmm.
and it is like adaptable. So you're right. It is something that you can plonk this person, even though it's not a continuation. But there's can always be similarities in each comic that I do or each illustration. But there's usually like a strain of this person.
Yeah, how did you land on this design?
Think it's just like a collection of my influences that have changed over. I feel like my style's changed. It does gradually change
Mm.
over time. I can never really see it in the short term, but if I look back at my work, say from 10 years ago, there you can see like where it's happened. And I think before when I used to draw, it was a lot more line work, and I'd try and attempt like cross hatching and things like that. And over
Mm.
time, it just became more and more simplified. Maybe it's just to sort of suit the churn out of social media, where I have to do things as simple as possible just to get out quickly. But I don't think so. I think I just like the kind of cleaner look in a way, and it's just gone that way naturally.
Do you feel like maybe you've ever been influenced by the type of work that was commissioned to you by clients, or was it always just kind of something that was, do you feel like the evolution of your art style is completely independent from that?
Yeah, independent, I'd say. Yeah, definitely. You have your client work, and then I can always just go back to what I did before, and that's the way I do it. And then it just gradually change over time. Have you felt like your style's changed for both of you?
Oh yeah.
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 I mean, oh, go ahead, Sean.
No. I was just gonna say, when you hop from show to show, I feel like I pick up things from every show that I work on that like at least slightly change it.
100%.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Because you draw in another style for so long that like you just kind of take it with you. But what's kind of interesting is how your, I don't know, like your personality or your brain or whatever it is that makes a person like themselves, you'll pick up like something different than the rest of the crew from the show. Because for a moment that kind of like honestly that was kind of like making me a little bit like, oh my God, like my style is getting like tainted by by this show. And then I had to be like, no, the stuff that I pick up are stuff that I actually like, or else I wouldn't be drawing it.
Do you feel like you pick up a lot of knowledge or skills from working with other people, as opposed to if you're working solo on your own in your home studio or room? Do you think it's beneficial to work with other people?
I think for me personally, and then Sean, you can speak on this, but for me as a like my personality type, I think works best that way because I'm not really someone who studies on their own, if that makes sense. Like I like to work a lot, but I don't incorporate a lot of study time in my practice. Like, and I say that because we've had artists on the podcast who will be like, I dedicate like this amount of time to like studying this style or studying this or that. And I don't naturally do that. So being on a show kind of is my version of that. It's my version of studying because I'm doing something that's not what I would be doing in my free time, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And it forces you to push yourself out of,
Yes,
falling into a routine, which is very
exactly.
easy to do when you're on your own, right?
I
Yeah.
don't know,
No, that
Prashant.
I feel like that makes a lot of sense. I am a similar way. I feel like most of my time is spent just desperately trying to get all the ideas out of me in the finite amount of time that I have, and very little time is spent on trying to learn new techniques. And I feel like the places that I do learn are through with collaborating with people. I mean, even to be honest, even drawing with a different artist every week for this podcast and seeing how they think about lines and color and shape, how they talk about lines and color. Like I find that doing that and working in close proximity or collaborating on a project with a different artist is where I learn and get outside of myself most of the time. What about you?
I was going to say, yeah, I was going to ask you actually, do you ever try and set yourself, I don't know, even a couple of hours a week where you try and do some self-initiated learning, say like doing like a
I
course
wish.
or
I wish that I was that. I wish I did that. I wish I was
yeah.
that kind of person. Do you do that?
I've tried to recently, but again, it's just that I find that I try and spin too many plates sometimes, and you realize you're not learning as
Yes.
quickly as you want to be. I think it's good to just maybe focus on one thing at a time. I found.
Dude, that is so real, and it's so funny that we kind of stumbled up upon this topic because I realized as I'm about to wrap up my comic, I want to wrap it up in February, March. I feel like I've learned so much doing it that before I start a new one, I was like, I want to take some time for learning for first of all, kind of like assessing from my work, but then I also want to take a little bit of time to read books, analyze other comic artists, analyze and do a little bit more analysis. And to your point, Alex, I do think it's a little bit hard to do both at once. And I
Mm-hmm.
really admire people who can do both.
I feel that way too.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm in learning mode or I'm in doing mode, and I feel like I've been in doing mode for a while. I would like to go into a little bit of a learning mode at some point.
But I think it's like what you said, Sean. It's like even when you are in when you're in the doing mode, you do slowly pick things up.
Yep.
Well, not necessarily slowly, but you do naturally pick things up as you go along anyway.
Sure.
So you don't have to sort of solely focus on being in that learning mode. Maybe just, be
And
aware of it.
and those are the things that I feel like are more subtle and sometimes you can take for granted. Like those are skills that you're accumulating and maybe you don't even know that you're accumulating until you step back and look at your work as a whole or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, how often would you guys say that you take a step back and look at your work as like not just a single piece that you've just done, but like as your full kind of like body of work?
I don't know how I'd be able to access that really without. I suppose it's all a lot of it's going to be online or on JPEG files on a computer.
Hmm.
No, I think I'd like to spend more time doing that. I think even like sometimes you can lose track of the qualities which got you going in the first place, and sometimes you evolve over time, but you can have those moments where you do feel like you burn out or you lose sight of things. And I think it's, if you do like look back at your body of work and everything that you've done, you can see the things that you really enjoyed in the past. Maybe that can help get you motivated again.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like that's something that I've just started doing. I wasn't really thinking about that before. Well, I guess because there's a part of your career where you do have to just build that all of that work, and that takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah, how long would you say for you, like Alex, it took to feel like you had like found your style or like found your voice?
How long did it take me? This is going to sound not arrogant, but I think I've always had a style from when I drew when I was a kid. There was always something that was just similar. Not that I'm way more refined now, of course, than I
Hmm.
was when I was 10 years old. But there was always a sort of style to it then, and it has changed over time. But there was something there, so I've never really been good at doing like realistic drawing. I've always
Mhm.
done things with my own cartoony interpretation of it, so it's always been omnipresent there.
But
My
what
own
about
voice.
the
So that,
you say yourself the eye and the finger, which is such a funny way to describe your work. Like
yeah,
what
You've
what,
always been an
what
eye and a finger guy, dude.
have you always
yeah,
been an
yeah.
eye and a finger guy?
I think so. Yeah. Do you know what? I found a really a point which it pushed me into going into illustration. Was an uncle of mine got me a book on Robert Crumb. You know,
Mm.
Oh, there we go.
That makes
Yes.
sense.
and that really, and when I read that, I was probably about 18 at the time, but when I received that, and I was like, wow, like this is, I've never seen this kind of art sort of side of drawing or art before. And you can actually, this guy is like however established he is and the way he's done it. And I think that really like channeled me into maybe pushing that style that was already there a little bit. It made me push it even more and take it somewhere else.
I was thinking at the very beginning of the interview, you mentioned really fast doing a couple of odd jobs before like focusing on illustration and art. Do you remember? Can you tell us a little bit what these kind of jobs were?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. So I was going to be I was on a scheme to become a manager at a supermarket,
Hmm.
and the aim was that eventually I'd become the manager of a department, and then maybe one day a store manager. But I was always kept at the trainee level after 5 years. They
Oh
never progressed me. I
no.
was always kept at
No.
that same bit. But I was really bad at it. I'd eat there's a bin out the back, a trash bin where you would throw all the food away, and I'd eat the disposals out the
Hmm.
disposal bin and get caught. So I think they just, they kind of kept me around as a mascot.
As a poverty mascot, like
Exactly. Well,
like
yeah, yeah.
this is our
Just
cute guy that eats out of the dumpster.
yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah,
love
yeah.
him.
They shine the torch on me, and I'm there, like, sort of custard around my face.
Oh my god.
I feel like I could see that being one of your comics. That feels like that is
That's very
very
funny.
much all right. The guy by the trash. That's so crazy. That is so funny. Wow. 5 years.
Yeah, I had 5 years, and then I did other jobs as well. So I did gardening, which I enjoyed gardening a lot. Actually, I thought that was I like the physical side of it and being outside, and
Hmm.
I did a bit of telesales, phone sales, that kind of thing, and lots of jobs. But I was never really that good at them. I think I was a lot better at drawing than I was at those jobs. Did you guys do the same thing? Did you go through a similar process?
I think that's the thing where I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I wish, okay, this is such a weird thing, but like, I remember telling my dad, like, I need to get like a summer job so I can make some money or whatever. And he was just like, don't waste your time. You should just be drawing, which was so weird because he didn't want me to go into arts. And I was like, okay. So I didn't really do any jobs besides animation. And sometimes I feel like I should have done a little bit of something else because then I would be more grateful for
Yeah.
work. I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah. So
like
I didn't know that people did that. They just went straight into, you know, animation or drawing.
Yeah, because how old were you when you studied arts?
I was about 23.
23. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Still pretty young.
yeah.
Yeah, but
What about
yeah, you had some time. Yeah, because I went straight from high school to like from high school I went into like a preparation art school and then I went to Gobelin. But
how was your experience there?
so that was more than 10 years ago because I graduated in 2011. So it's changed a lot, but the curriculum was mostly focused on animation, which was good, but for me it was also just kind of like and now I don't animate, I only do storyboards.
Was it that experience that took you away from it? You thought never again?
Honestly, kind of, because it was
Yeah.
just so painstaking. I was like, we were animating on paper. Like they didn't want us to animate on the computer because
Oh,
it was
really?
like, yeah, it was
Is that still to this day as well? Is it all done
no.
in an
Now
analog way? No.
I think I don't even know. I should talk to like people who are at Gobelin right now, but I think they might be animating all on the computer now, but at the time it was all on paper and it took me so long to know how to flip the pages to see the animation kind of come to life on and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like so I worked a few regular jobs and I very quickly realized that there's no way that I'm going to work a regular job and ever and like do well at it because I'm so distracted by
Yeah.
not wanting to work that job. So like I remember like
You
I
weren't eating out the bins, were you?
I work I close, no, almost. I stole I got fired for stealing a soda from PetSmart. I worked at PetSmart and I just over and over again there were problems. They didn't like me because of my hair because I had dreadlocks and they keep telling me to brush my hair and I was like I can't
Wait, where was
because the
this? Was this
dreadlocks.
in Philly?
Yeah, this was in like suburbs of Philadelphia.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And I biked to work every day and I would wait until there was 20 minutes until I had to be at work and my bike ride was like 17 minutes if I biked as fast as I could. And I
Yeah.
remember just like every single time just like absolutely slaughtering myself to get to work, allowing there's no allowance for if I was going to get a flat tire, for if it was going to be raining, anything, and I would just show up every time so sweaty like at work and clock in and I would oversleep because I was like studying art and animation and like pulling all-nighters and then I would go to
Yeah.
work and like I made so many mistakes and I opened up the PetSmart once and like no one was in and the cash registers weren't in, so I took a soda and I drank it and I was like, oh, I'll like pay for it when the registers get in, and I forgot. And I feel like every non-art job was like that for me, where I was just constantly
State of panic all the time, or a state of like
yeah,
delirium.
I was getting reprimanded. Like for a little while, I worked a filing job at University of the Arts, and at a certain point, they just sort of sent me down to the basement to like
Oh
move
no.
boxes around. Like I was just like,
Yeah.
they were like, okay, he's out of
Just
sight,
give him
out of
something to do.
mind. And then
Yeah,
like
yeah.
people and I like every once in a while the janitor would come through and I was in the sub basement just getting sweaty and dusty moving boxes with no shirt on and short shorts with metal music playing like cuz no one was down there
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure I wasn't supposed to be doing any of that. Like I should probably keep a shirt on at work. But yeah, I just yeah, it wasn't for me and I started getting filling up my forearms with tattoos specifically so that I would have trouble getting regular jobs to like force
Planned
me
ahead.
into
Yeah.
like I wanted to force myself into a corner like I had to get an art job. Like if I don't, I'm not going to be able to get a regular one. That was like
Yeah.
my initial I don't know.
That's funny because I feel like now tattoos are like I see people like
For
at
sure.
Trader Joe's with like full sleeves and stuff.
For sure, for sure.
But that's yeah,
I
that's
feel like
just
it was
really
less
funny.
accepted back then, yeah.
Yeah.
When was this? What year was this?
Is this 2008, 2007, 2009, something like that?
And maybe at those days, tattoos on your
Yeah.
forearms weren't as common then.
That's
A little bit, yeah.
and it also
What?
depends on the city, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. Because I could see, for example, I'm trying to think if in Europe, like I'm trying to think if in France, people with sleeves, I don't know. A lot of my classmates ended up getting
It
sleeves.
wasn't a good plan. I mean,
Yeah, at the
long
time.
sleeves exist. So like
Mhm.
it wasn't a
Yeah.
good plan, but that's what I thought to myself. I
You're,
was like,
you're banking on
okay,
that.
this is how I'm going to force myself into taking an art job. Like I'll get a bunch of tattoos and not be able to get work. Like I don't know, that's like my
That's so
weird
funny.
young brain.
But then, did you go to study animation at college?
Yeah. I studied in Philadelphia, and my school actually doesn't exist anymore. It closed, so
Was that
it's
because of
called.
you?
Yeah,
Yeah, because
pretty
I was
much.
Sean.
Yeah, they found out that there was this person with no shirt on filing boxes
Yeah,
in the sub
listen to
basement,
that music.
and one day to keep warm, I made a fire in the files to
Oh
just try to stay
no.
warm, and it burned down the school. No, they just closed mismanagement, I think, of money, but and it was quarantine, all that stuff, but
I yeah,
yeah.
I do feel like so many art schools are scams. How did you pick your school, Alex? Like how did you know which one to pick?
I was going to go to another one, which is right in the very like the western corner of the UK. It's called a place called Cornwall.
Mm.
Actually, pretty close to France, Cornwall. I was going to go to university there, but I ended up I didn't want to. I became less ambitious, and I just went to one in London, which is where I'm from.
Mm.
So I went to one close by in London. Yeah, I mean, I always found with university, I thought it would be a lot more. I thought I'd be guided along a lot more, but I realised a lot of it's quite self-initiated. You have to find out the information yourself
Hmm.
about how industry works
Yeah,
post university.
it's a lot of self-teaching.
It's
Yeah,
so true. It's so funny. I'm glad that you bring that up because I feel like I don't know. I don't know if I was just like a sheltered kid or whatever, but I just expected school to help us figure out way more stuff. And it's a lot of stuff you have to kind of like, well, either you obviously you have the teachers and you can go up to them and ask them questions, but it's so different from high school where like in high school it's like the teacher gives you the lecture and then you don't want to talk to the teacher ever again. You know what I mean? It's like
yeah,
whereas like in university, college, you kind of have to talk to your teachers a little bit more, like
Yeah.
after class or whatever, to kind of, I don't know.
but then I feel like with your university experience, you said it was very much like from a technical aspect to it, where
Hmm.
you still at least maybe don't find out about like how to make money in the industry, but at least you leave it with you learnt a skill and you
Do,
mastered the skill.
do you feel like they didn't really like deliver as much as you hoped they would
Not
for
not
like
not
skill?
from definitely not in terms of technicality either. No, not at all.
Mm.
I don't know what I learned there, but it seemed to work. Maybe it gives you a good work ethic in a way. I feel like you have a lot of ongoing projects, and I feel like by the time you leave
Hmm.
university, that you feel like you're catered to being able to work with lots of things at the same time, multitask, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah, that's true. I do feel like that does help. Do you feel like you had any like classes or anything that helped you kind of, I don't know, think about your work or like talk about your work? Like I'm kind of like thinking back on like those emails that you had to send and like kind of like sell yourself. Do you feel like any other classes that you took kind of helped you kind of put into? Because I remember the first class, not Gobelin, but that school that I kind of went to before, we had to kind of talk about our work in a kind of fine arts kind of way to be like, well, this is what I was thinking, this and that, blah blah blah. And I think you end up having to do that in jobs a lot more than expected, I guess. I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
any sense.
Oh, what, and did you think, what if there was something that maybe did that same? I think it prepared you in a way for the
Yeah.
outside world.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was more through learning via experience, going through it, and then each time you gain a little bit more every time. There wasn't necessarily a class beforehand which prepped me for it. It's just more you go through it, and then you go through slight highs and slight lows with it as well, and you learn on the go.
Yeah, I feel like one of the frustrating things about school was I had expected teachers to have more investment in like preparing me for what it's like to work as a professional, whether that means like setting me up to like start looking for jobs, or set me up with connections, or organize like career days, or whatever, like career festivals where different studios come and they see our portfolios, whatever. And I think that because my school was a little bit more of an experimental animation school and like a generalist school, I found that my teachers, I think some of them even resented the fact that they would be even expected to do that. I remember a couple of them making posts that were like ranting about it. like it's not my job. It's my job to teach you animation, not to get you jobs or whatever. And um and I remember getting a little frustrated. I think I ruffled some feathers at one point because I emailed my old teachers, or like the heads of the department, and I was like, listen, like this year so many students emailed me asking if it's even possible to get a job working in animation, and if it's a career that is possible. I'm like, what are you guys doing like over there? Like, do you need like I will help connect you with studios to get representatives to talk to your students if you need to, but I'm getting like 10 students emailing me asking me like, are there studios that hire animation students, and how does one like work in animation? And I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, it's getting to the point where like I feel like there should be a gap where the teachers are filling in here. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about it now. I can understand that point of view of like, not like, it's my job to like, I'm teaching you animation, I shouldn't be like the one expecting to hook you up, but going into debt to not get any help with that is kind of gnarly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you went back and contacted them, was this like when you were an alumni? This was later on down the
Yes,
line.
yes.
Okay,
I
right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I ended up sending them a list. I followed up with all of my development contacts at all the studios I had pitched at, and I made a list of all the people that would be willing to talk to a UArts person and
Hmm.
their class. And I sent them all of the active studios in Los Angeles. And I was like, here, if I hope this helps. And then I found out from students later that they didn't use any of that. And I was like, dude, come
Whoa.
on. I was like, come on. And they might have been like, this fucking jerk off. Like, you're fucking like sending
Yeah,
us
yeah.
contacts that you're expecting us to use, whatever. But like, I don't know. I mean, going into the animation industry back then was scary, and now I feel like it's even scarier, and I feel like
And
that's a concern.
do you think more so now then? Do you think even now we have more, in a way, it's more accessible,
I
would you
think
say, but you still think it's scarier?
students might even be more scared now because of how much they're hearing about the animation industry collapsing.
I think that's an interesting point that you're bringing up, Sean, because I do think they're hearing that. However, I feel like it's never been easier to look people up. I'm kind
Yep.
of thinking about the list that you've put together for the school, and I'm thinking about Alex bringing up earlier in the podcast that he looked up like all of like the different like magazines publications.
Mm-hmm.
Now it wouldn't be magazines, it would be probably websites like I don't know, Fubiz or Boom or like, those like kind of like illustrator
Yeah.
designer websites. So now, and everybody has a social media, you can DM
Yeah.
people way more easily. So I feel like, of course, yes, there's like all the discourse online that's scary, but there's also an accessibility that is way,
Right.
I don't know, more. You can find way more information way easier. You just have to know how to look for it, which I think can is the tricky part.
That's
Yep.
it. Yeah.
Well, I think it's scary if your only goal is to work at Cartoon Network. Or like if your
Yes.
only
Hmm.
goal is like,
Mm.
I want to work on a show. But if you graduate and you're like, I want to get paid to animate. Like I think
Mm.
that's a more accessible, like
Yes.
there are still commercial jobs. There are still, there's different things that even when shows aren't being made, or when or if people are on strike or whatever it is, like there are other avenues. But I think that, yeah, a lot of the people have heard their whole life about the traditional route of going onto a show, and you're like, I'm at Cartoon Network for the rest of my life, going from show to show, and it's stable. Like that is, well, Cartoon Network as a studio that building doesn't exist anymore. So that
Yeah.
is a there's a wrench in that
It's
spoke,
impossible.
but
It's impossible. It's just a building.
You
It's
know,
it's
just a
just a
building.
building.
yeah.
It's
I keep seeing all these arguments online. Like people are like, Cartoon Network, get it through your heads. Cartoon Network doesn't even exist anymore. It's a ghost of itself. The building is gone, and then other kids are like, but then what do you call Cartoon Network? What's airing right now then? And they're like, it's just a shell. It's a ghost. Yeah, your dreams are over. There's such a
do you, Alex, do you keep up
polarizing
with
thing.
online art discourse at all?
Like in terms of like Cartoon Network and
I
Or
don't
like
know.
any
Yeah.
any kind, because I feel like there's so many different types of discourse, and I'm always surprised because like like every different circle has their own discourse. I don't know. Are are you an avid discourse person, or do you just you're just like, nah, online is just for posting and I disappear?
yeah, I feel like I'm always a bit of a sort of lone wolf. Like I don't really have. I work on my own pretty much like 99% of the time in my
hmm
room.
Okay.
So I don't really tend to. I think I'm quite separated from that world in a way,
Yeah.
Oh,
which
that's
is
funny because I was wondering if there was like maybe like I don't know, directors or like illustrators because I feel like there's communities that form pretty fast online and like you can easily just kind of like start following a couple people and then they have their own like opinions and hot takes.
no. Do you know what? I'm completely ignorant to all of it, and I'm quite intrigued now. I want to join the revolution of join us, pick a side. I think I
Well,
need to. Yeah, tonight I'm going
well,
to make a decision. And
yeah. Would you do you feel like are you more tapped into the comics community than the animation community, or in general are you like there's communities?
yeah, yeah, probably more on that. Yeah, on the latter.
That's
I
so
think I
funny.
do notice, like that the maybe more into an illustration
I
community
got you.
of people like I graduated with, or people in a similar year group to me.
Yeah.
But I'm still fairly shut off as well. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I'm uninfluenced, in
I
my
think that's
opinion.
good. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I'll be I'll be naughty and go on TikTok and look at the drama that because there's different when, I talk about different circles, is that like for example you have the animation circle which is like people in Hollywood working on shows and they have their own discourse. And then you have hobbyists who will do commissions or like that is like a little bit of a different circle where it's not like people who work for like the press, but they mostly rely on like commission work and
Mm-hmm.
they tend to have discourse around their personal style because their personal style is kind of what has value, how they're going to get commissioned. So there's drama there, which is a different circle.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have like the comics community discourse where they're like kind of a little bit more like a tour, kind of like the
Yeah.
discourse will be like, can you believe this drama happened with these awards? Can you believe this teacher at
Yeah.
this
Can
school?
you believe
Like,
this comic artist thinks they're an artist?
or like
yeah,
so,
yeah.
or
Can you
like
believe
so and so
it?
sold out.
No,
Now
no,
they're
no.
not like a
It,
real
it
comic
sounds like
artist.
Sellouts,
it
dude.
sounds like a
Yeah.
cutthroat world out there.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty dog eat dog, like
I
No,
mean,
I think the loudest voices on these sites are incentivized to be polarizing and
yes.
incentivized to start drama and make videos that are dramatic and I think those are the ones that you end up seeing the most because they're the loudest, but also half the time those people are they're either uninformed or they're kind of like acting in bad faith, like they don't have the full picture.
It's
Like
kind of like
mhm.
reality TV, but with artists.
Yeah,
but
maybe
nerdy
it
and
needs that.
stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It needs that extra touch of spice
Yeah.
to this world. Otherwise, it's all very sterile and yeah, no, just sort of crouched over a desk. Do
That's
they
so
formulate like gangs in the city and
Oh my God, that
have
is
turf wars?
so funny.
Yeah,
I do feel there's a little bit of that, yes, because it's kind of like because then there's cliques forming between the different groups, I think. So funny.
I wish animation drama, at the very least, was like Jersey Shore style, where like they go down to the boardwalk and they get in a fist fight and one of their titties pop out and then they like get arrested or something. You know, like
Yeah.
they get in a drunk fist fight and then they end up unconscious under the boardwalk. Like
Yeah.
at the very least, let's have a spectacle. But right now it's mostly people saying like
It's more sort of that, like claws and sort of backstabbing, cloak and dagger, more as opposed to like
a
a.
little bit. I stay out of a lot of the drama. I do like sometimes I go on Twitter just to see like okay like what show are people really upset about right now. But
But
like
sometimes you have drama that's not like that gets people to come together. Like for example, well the I'm kind of thinking of Alex Norris who does the a webcomic oh no
Yeah.
webcomic
He's in a
name.
legal dispute, isn't he?
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
kind of count that as like not drama as in like people are like pitted against each other, but like he like he kind of got
true.
his stuff stolen and now there's like there's discourse in the sense that it's like it creates awareness around an issue about like your work, how it's copyrighted, and it also kind of serves as like an educational type of I guess case for a lot of other artists.
Yeah.
And that sucks. I feel that's
Yeah.
such a terrible ongoing like legal thing. But I would kind of also put that in there where it's like not always artists against each other, but it's also just kind of like okay, like being like freelance and all of that. What the life of an artist.
Can it be beneficial though in a way as well though? Because it's like there's a community out there and you can help each other out in some
I
ways.
think
It's not
so.
all infighting.
Yeah, it's not all infighting. I definitely think
No,
there's
it's not.
like there's definitely I think it's also community driven.
Yeah.
Everybody listening to the podcast, tell us about your favorite art discourse in the comments.
Yeah, I mean the art community that I have on my social media is very positive. Everyone's making a lot of stuff. They support each other. They talk each other up. They do collaborate. I mean, like, I live in I feel like my social media, I'm in a very different world than like the Twitter, people angry on Twitter about this show coming out and it the writers doing something wrong and I don't know, whatever. Like, yeah, I feel like I live in a different world from that.
You're too much like with your head down working as opposed to allowing yourself to kind of being dragged down into the
Well, I think
the
that you're
cattiness.
the stuff that you see a lot of the time are the people that you surround yourself with too. Like while my feed does recommend consistent cringe videos and like just people getting into fist fights, yes, that my algorithm
With the
has
breasts
gone
dropping out.
astray.
Yeah.
My algorithm has gone astray. The actual people that I follow, when I do get art recommended to me, it's the people that I follow are very positive and they're making stuff, and that's really cool. And so I mean that's one of the main reasons why I haven't abandoned social media completely is I follow so many cool artists that are making cool shit, and it's all going to depend on what you feed into and who you follow.
Alex,
Yes.
what is your social media of choice and what is your feed like?
So my social, my like the Discover page.
Yeah. What's your like? What's
What
the
what
mix of videos that would come up at a random
I always have
time
to.
for
Do you know
you?
what really annoys me? I don't know. I'm not in control of this, but I always have to like try and get rid of like Joe Rogan videos. And I have
Oh my
they
God.
always
Okay.
popping up. I don't want them there, but they always coming up. So maybe it's suggesting that I would like Joe Rogan, but I don't. I don't know if any of you
so
guys.
interesting because I mean for me
Interesting, yeah.
it's all cats and parrots.
I
All
wish it
cats.
was. I wish it. Yeah, no. Instead I've got like.
Wow,
Yeah.
that the algorithm is really trying to sell it to you. That's so
Oh,
funny.
you get parrotgram recommended to you. Do you like birds? I didn't even know you liked birds.
My boyfriend loves parrots.
Oh
So
my
he sends me a
God,
ton
that's
of like
funny.
parrot videos, and now my feed is half parrots, which I love. They're really cute. They're amazing.
Yeah.
I never cared for birds before, and now I'm like they're pretty neat.
My
So-
mom was a
It's-
bird lady. She bred parrots and birds, and so I grew up with birds my whole life. But my wife doesn't get it. I do like bird videos also, but yeah.
Is Parrotgram a specific page?
No. I made up a section of Instagram.
I'd already written it down. Have a look.
Parrotgram.
Note to self.
I like my whole feed right now is taken up by different families that kind of cosplay as wolves, and they've named one part of the no, they don't. Okay, so these particular ones don't really dress up as wolves. They're like, hi, I'm the alpha of the pack, nuzzle nuzzle, and this is my wife. And then like they'll like put on some music, and then they'll all like pretend to run.
They snarl and like cavort.
They're like LARPing.
Yeah, with face paint on and scratching the camera. Right?
The best ones are like, it'll be some like some tough clip, like it'll sound like some like Spartan talking, like giving a war speech, like, you mess with one of us, you mess with the head of the, you mess with the wolf, you get the pack, and like, and then the whole family will come out and like fold their arms and look tough, and and I imagine that they think it's very cool.
I've seen it. Yeah,
those are like all the videos that I'm getting recommended now. It's just people like essentially cringe stuff.
Yeah, I think stay in that lane. It sounds enjoyable. It doesn't. It's better than Joe Rogan, I think.
Yeah,
it does make you like it makes you start thinking about like, is this the world that's all around me? You know what I mean? Like, is this are these like, what percentage of the population are these folks? Like, are these my people? Is there a reason why I'm
you can hear them howling at night? Yeah.
Dude, is there anybody that thinks of me this way? You know what I mean? Like, you're like, anybody could be. Cringe is subjective. You know what I mean? Like, what if someone thinks,
find the pack,
I'm the alpha of the pack? Yeah.
It's funny because for me, I don't think I ever met a wolf person in real life. Like, how there's and that's been a long time that people, even back on YouTube, when we didn't have any of the social media, it was just YouTube. I remember skits being uploaded of like people like having a character where they're like a wolf teen, and like, doing like the makeup and the tail and the ears. We are so far from the original point of the podcast.
No, dude, we're getting to the good shit. We've gotten past all the small talk, fucking animation bullshit. Like, I'm trying to get past that and talk about Therians.
I've always thought that this character wasn't real. It was like kind of like a subconscious shared imagination of like, oh yeah, there's like wolf kids out there, there's like wolf people, but I've never met one in real life. But now I see all these videos, and I'm like, there's got to be some real, quote unquote, real like wolf people, who like, I don't know.
Yeah,
yeah.
What are you gonna say?
What were we gonna say? Sorry.
I was going to say, well, maybe that's the beauty of the accessibility of the internet. We find our folk. Brings out, these niche communities. I always remember the only person you would ever see was remember that guy who transformed himself into a cat, and he had like the silicone implants in his.
Yes.
Remember that guy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Him, and he would like pop up in documentaries on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
every now and then.
Recently, I've been very fascinated by it's not just one person, it's several people that have dissociative identity disorder. And so they have a bunch of different alters in what they call their system of personalities. Yeah. And they'll talk about how one of their alters is they're basically a Therian, someone who identifies as an animal, and they'll be like, so one of my alters is a vulture, and once a day I'll have some raw meat when they come out, and like, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like learning about a whole new ecosystem. Like I feel like David Attenborough, like
you need to go down and observe them. Yeah.
I wish that I could,
like a night vision camera,
sit outside their house and like you were talking about before, how you got arrested for stalking
Yeah.
animation directors and stuff. Yeah, I think that's sort of how I feel about. I wish I could, like, I wish they would like be, they're in their living room and they're like nuzzling each other's tails or whatever, getting into scratch fights, and then they look over and I'm in a ghillie suit in the corner,
Yeah,
like I'm like
yeah.
I got leaves on, and I'm like, hopefully they don't
Yeah.
know. I'm in like my wolf blind in the
Yeah.
corner of the room, like hopefully they don't notice me. I'm like dressed as a couch or something, like like
No, no, you need to catch it at their most kind of like, tender and natural moment, you know? Yeah, do
yeah,
not, yeah.
because it's not all cringe. I'm sure there's like some very like heartwarming, like weird, it's just something that it's not my world, so
You need to, if you can bottle it up somehow, maybe you need to extract it from them. There's something
yeah.
in there that you need to, maybe it can't be seen by human eye. You need to get that purity out of them.
Now,
Mhm.
do you think if I made a cartoon about this, what percentage of my writer's room would need to be cringers and therians and furries, like to have adequate like representation to accurately write
I think
this thing in
you
a
need to go
like
all
a
in. You need to immerse yourself. You need to
yeah.
go undercover, get in there, join them.
Because
I
Spend
I
10
do
years.
believe
agree.
in representation, and I do
I think
believe that if my writer's room needs to be full of people that identify are like lichens, people that identify as wolves or whatever.
because I think, and I don't know if like you guys have read, well, I think it's more autobio type of comics, but there's this French author as well, Riyad Satouf. He actually became I forget what you call it in English, but like when you're in school and you have to supervise the kids during recess just to make sure, nobody does anything insane. It's not
Mm,
Yeah,
like
like a monitor.
yeah, like a monitor,
Yeah,
like yeah, yeah, yeah. So he was
yeah,
like a monitor in like high school for like a year or something, and then he drew a bunch of comics about teenagers, and it wasn't like exactly what he saw, but it
yeah,
was very heavily influenced. And and I was like, yeah, that's the way to do it because it's almost like investigative journalism in a way because it's
right.
like because you
Immerse
write
yourself.
about yeah what you knew from back then, but now things have changed and I was like, oh, that is so cool. I don't know. I think that is
would
cool
it
to like
would it be
be in the community like that.
would it be called is it gonzo journalism?
I think that's kind of what
Ah,
it is. Yeah, it's kind of like Gonzo comics, I guess. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
yeah. We were talking to the last person we interviewed was Mike Manor, who worked at a cafe for a long time, and recent cartoons that he's made have taken place in it's like a cafe, and I do think that having your real life experience, like if I made a cartoon about working at PetSmart, I feel like
Yeah.
that would have a lot of like personal
Yep.
things that I could write that would feel inspired and real versus like me
Yeah,
just
yeah.
assuming an experience.
But I remember when I was at the supermarket, which is called Sainsbury's, I remember some of the like my co-workers, no offense to them, but they, interesting characters and,
Yep. Yeah.
visually and well, in every sense.
In every sense.
Yeah,
That's
and the
so much.
customers too.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think service jobs, sometimes that's what I think about. Sometimes I'm like, I feel like I should take a break from art and do a service job for like a year or something just so I could see more types of people. Because I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
what you feel like, Alex, like especially going from like these service jobs and then now being on your own, working by yourself a lot of the time. Like,
Yeah, I often wonder if you do, when I was there working that for 5 years, that you do end up like you collect a load of information, and
mhm,
then for me, it was like, you have this outpouring of creativity because you've been almost like frustrated, like you haven't been able to draw for ages, but then also you're taking loads in as well, and then you have a lot to go off. Well, then you start to slow down because you're living this kind of solitary on your own lifestyle of drawing all the time, and you must like burn out or like your well runs dry eventually. So you need to have that dedicated time amongst the walls, you know, and
that's
watch
so
their
true.
nuzzling.
Do you Do you have any kind of like type of like activities, hobbies, or anything that you do to kind of have like that social time now?
No, I like to because I'm so stationary all the time. I like to try and keep fit. So I do like play soccer, stuff like that. And yeah,
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
okay.
yeah. How about you guys?
Man, I'm such a homebody. I go to the gym, but it's like very solitary in a way because I work out on my own. But I like to hang out with other artists, but then I'm like, I only ever talk to other artists.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My down to I feel like your thing, V, your interesting thing would probably be like convention experiences or something like that. Like I feel like that's like a social thing that not
Mhm.
everybody gets to do, but it's like around a lot of people. I feel like my normal thing, my like social thing is probably I play in I've played in bands my whole life, and like I, I play in a death metal band right now, and we
yeah.
play shows, and we go on like little mini tours. Like I can't go on like full tours, but like little weekend tours. And I think that experiences and meeting people, watching and weird experiences with people, that's where I get those, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like that would be a good outlet. You feel like, gigging and doing your mini tours, you still feel like you're coming across a lot of people, and it's also quite an expressive form, isn't it? Death metal. So you feel like, you're I imagine it could be a bit of a stress release too, right?
Yeah. Like I mean, like last time we played a show, we did a little mini tour to Arizona, and there was this woman who came to the show and asked. She was like, "Come out to my car," and we like she like and she kept asking the band, "Come out to my car. I have something to show you." And we were like, and
Kind
we
of
went out to the
scary.
car, and she opened her trunk, and it was stocked to the brim with food and water bottles that she was trying to give us, like store bought stuff to like give us for when we're touring so we could eat healthy. And
Not bad.
she was just like, yeah, like I'm part of the Navajo reservation, and it's part of my culture to like support people in this little artist community that we have. And she was telling us about how she just got over cancer, and like and
Mhm.
her kids supporting her, and like all this stuff. And we were like, what, like what. And that's like, it's stuff like that, like
Mhm.
experiences with strangers that like you just don't get, like
Mhm.
sitting at your
Yeah.
desk working on a thing. Like I never could have written something like that. That's like so out of nowhere. And also, on the opposite hand, recently I played with a band where the singer kept getting naked all the time after the show too, in the bar. Like and so like they performed, and then one of their bandmates was like, yeah, he said that he wanted to get naked during our set, and then he didn't do it. And then like when I talked to when a guy came over, I was like, what happened, dude? I thought you were gonna get naked. And he was like, oh, I'll do it. And then in the middle of the bar, he just started he just got naked in the middle of the bar, like like wiener out, everything. He
Yeah,
just
yeah.
he was only wearing like a chain around his waist, and just, but the thing is no one in the bar noticed. Like there
Yeah.
was just a fully
He's got it
naked
down to a
man in the
fine
middle
art.
of the bar,
Yeah.
and nobody noticed. And then he took off all his clothes later for the photo with the group, and I'm like, what is happening? And so I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's the full gambit with.
Did he actually exist, this guy? Was he just in your imagination?
It was my fantasy, and it was the only thing that was keeping that night and that performance erotic for me. Like, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
sometimes I need something like that to keep me there, or else I'm like, oh my god, my ADHD is going crazy. No. But yeah, I don't know. I think that kind of stuff makes for some really interesting stories that you wouldn't normally get in like a solitary
Yeah, it
thing.
sounds like quite a hardcore contrast to the normality, which is great. To have
Yeah,
that have
yeah. I
that
mean, you
that
run you run the
option there,
full you run the full gambit, and then there's the like our vocalist is an actor in movies, and so like when we're touring, like we'll eat breakfast at a breakfast place, and then like people will like try to come up and get photos with him and stuff, and like that I like there's like this weird, like we had this one show where for some reason all the people that came to see us were 15-year-old girls that wanted to meet him, and
No,
it was
that's
just this
interesting.
line. Dude, it was just this line. Our merch table was just, it was just this line of 15, of like 14, 15-year-old girls at this metal show who, like, I could tell like had never listened to death metal
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And I was like, first of all, why are we in another state and like all these people are here to see us, and they're like little girls, like what the fuck is
Little
going on?
girl.
And then yeah, I don't know. So I don't know, there's a lot of weird a lot of
So
weird
funny.
things going on there.
Can I ask you, a vocalist, what has he been in? Is he quite a well-known actor?
He's not a super well known actor. His name is Keir Gilchrist, and he was in the movie It Follows. He's the lead in the Netflix show Atypical.
I think that's
Ah, yeah,
probably
yeah, yeah.
what is like the most. I mean, I It Follows is pretty famous, but I knew him from Atypical.
Yeah,
Because
he was
Yeah.
in a movie called It's Kind of a Funny Story with Zach Galifianakis. He was in when he was younger. I think that he was a lot of young gay men's coming of age crush because he played a gay son in a series called United States of Terror.
Yeah.
And yeah, but yeah, so he's been in, he's not like extremely famous, but it's one of those things where like sometimes when we're out it creates interesting circumstances where we'll have to like dodge what is sometimes referred to as a have you ever heard this term, a punisher? Someone who like
Like
comes,
the, as in like the comic, the
no,
Punisher.
it's somebody who is you'd refer to them as a punisher. Like it's someone who comes up and like won't leave you alone and is like trying
oh,
to hang out near you all
Okay,
night, and like
sort of like
it's like
overstepping the
it's
mark
like
kind of thing.
you're punishing me right now.
ah,
Right.
It's like
Okay.
you're,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's like a
you get
slang
those
thing,
at
but yeah,
conventions a hundred
a little
percent.
bit.
Yeah,
Really. Yeah. Yeah.
when you table. Do you ever
In
get those
conventions
like
that happens a lot. Yeah.
yeah, Alex, when you do like any other like speaking stuff, do you ever get like anybody like that? That's like, oh, I want to talk
Any
to you.
Punishers?
Yeah, any
Obviously.
Yeah,
punishers?
you get any
No,
punishers?
I'm intrigued, but I need to find myself a Punisher. I think because I'm so far no. So yeah, I'm missing out. I think.
You're missing out on punishers.
Do you know? I always find that when I do things like illustrators fairs and stuff, I always find that they're enjoyable because again it's like my chance to get to be amongst other illustrators or
Yeah.
get to meet people. I suppose that is a bit like a convention, isn't it? An
Hmm.
illustrator market, similar feel.
Yeah, yeah, I would
Yeah.
say so.
And it's important to do, I think, because otherwise, I always find that when you just stick to social media, you can not become bitter and wrinkled, but you can become bitter and wrinkled, and start to get not paranoid, but you start to compare your work to others. Or I think
Yeah.
it's really important to go out and when you're at a convention or you're at a fair or something, and you're amongst other people actually in real time and in person, you realize that everyone's nice and it's important to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I feel like, especially if you're like kind of solitary, it might be, I don't know if you ever fall into that, but like it can be easy to just fall into like the competitive nature of social media, and then you forget a little bit of like
Yeah.
the human element of like creation, I
Yeah.
guess.
I will say I feel like Creative Block has created more in-person positive listener experiences than I've had in my whole time of like making cartoons on my own. Like it's like I've had a lot more like people that come up and they're like, oh, like I moved out to California to pursue animation because I listened to Creative Block and you guys talked about how it's not, it's something that a lot of people do and it's doable and it's possible, and I'm like, oh man, that's so cool to hear, because that's not necessarily the kind of thing that people will type in the comments. That's not something that we would hear otherwise, I think. But when people kind of like run into you at a convention and they recognize you or something, yeah, it's really positive. It's good.
When did you start Creative Block? When was it the first one aired or recorded?
I think 2020. I think during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they would have, they would have recently come out, and probably not episodes that I was on. I came on as a co-host episode 100, but it's still cool.
Yeah.
It's still cool to run into
We have
people
a
like that.
funny, kind of spicy question for you, Alex. And you feel free to like answer it or not. But our patron Mallard is asking, what is your experience working with Adobe and what's your opinion of the industry seemingly starting to migrate away from the Adobe services and products?
What's my experience working with, like, as in working with the program, or?
I think they probably say because you have like on your website like the Adobe kind of like logo that you've worked with them and you've done kind of like would you say
I
that
mean,
you
yeah, I have done stuff with them before, but it was always really through like an external agency. So I
Yeah.
never actually had, like, I never
So your
spoke to them one
allegiance
on
to
one.
them is really strong, and you're
Yeah, I'd die for them, I think.
Yes.
I have got like a full scale Adobe A on my back.
yeah,
He got branded.
When I hang from the ceiling with chains on my
yeah.
back, and
You've
it's
got
like
the
shaped of,
you've got the scarlet letter A.
exactly, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And the candles
Oh
around
my
my
god.
room are sayings in the
Yeah, I was
form
about
of
to say,
Adobe.
like, all right, I can't wait to see this PR tap dancing performance where you try to dot, you're like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Adobe. I love working with them. It's not my personal view that whatever. Yeah.
I've got like an Adobe agent next to me. You can't see him, but he's like his hands inside me, like it's like I'm like a puppet.
Well, I do
Oh my
feel like
God.
I've seen a lot in the industry, people kind of feeling weird about the subscription method, and B, kind of like programs that you have to pay a lot of money for, kind of having a monopoly on certain parts of
Yeah,
the industry, and people. So what do you think about that stuff?
yeah. I feel that. Well, for me, I've always felt I've just sort of bowed down and took it really, and just I've accepted that I have to pay the extortionate Adobe fee. But it's not great. I think, like, there are programs out there which can, it'd be good to support those, and if they can do half a job that Adobe can, then you don't want to see them Adobe take over and monopolize everything.
Mhm.
I think yeah, I think it's not great the way that they're, yeah, taking over, buying out all their competition and charging a lot of money for it. I'd say I'm against that.
Nice. Yeah, I do feel like it's funny because I have noticed in the recent years, I would say in the past 5 years, people actually like migrating. I have
Yeah.
myself migrated away from Adobe products because I was just like, it's just too expensive, man. I can't like
So
justify it.
what do you use instead then? To what are your go-tos?
A different
I
subscription service.
No, I actually
Yeah.
no. So this is me like going on my little soapbox because I love Clip Studio Paint. It costs only $50. It's a Japanese program. It's not I will say for illustrators and comic artists, it's good. I think for people who use Adobe Photoshop for anything that's like photography and retouching anything photography, Clip Studio Paint can't handle it. But if all you do is very like illustration
Yeah.
comics, Clip Studio
Yeah.
Paint I think is great.
No, they're great.
There is a little bit of a learning curve because things are not like laid out in the same kind of way, but I was very surprised to see like it even has some functions that I personally like better than Adobe, like Vector. You can use Vector really easily in Clip Studio Paint.
Do you like using Vector to animate, or
So
previously?
I want to try to animate in Clip Studio Paint. I haven't done it yet. I think for Vector can be really good if you want a specific look to your line. It really
Yeah.
depends on the style you're going for, I think.
So Clip Studio Paint, if you want to sponsor us, feel free to
Please.
sponsor us. And
Get in there quick. Yeah.
Clip Studio Paint, we hate Adobe. We're getting away from Adobe. And Adobe, if you want to sponsor us, we're not doing Clip Studio Paint as much anymore, and we'd love to work with you. No, I'm so sorry. What were you
Got a
going to
couple of
say?
bases, man. You got to get in there. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so
You got to do
funny.
it.
But yeah, that was just my little soapbox moment.
What do you use, Sean?
I use Adobe Animate primarily for almost
Oh,
everything.
come on.
Nah, well, the thing is I've been using it since I was 13. So I started with Adobe Flash or Macromedia Flash, and like that straight up, that's been my primary program since I was 13. And so
Yeah.
like I'm just like I like how my lines look in it. It sucks. Like I don't like the prescription, you know, the subscription model. It's there's a lot. I have a lot of issues with it. I hope that someday I can be free. I've started using Clip Studio more, and I do like it.
So you as well. Yeah.
Yeah, for my animation stuff, I almost strictly use Adobe. For storyboarding for work, I use Storyboard Pro. It's a Toon Boom product. But what about yourself? What do you draw in?
Like I said, you've seen the tattoo on my back. It's solely Adobe at the moment. I use
It's Adobe,
Procreate.
yeah. Oh, Procreate.
Procreate's a good one. I think a lot
Yeah,
of.
no, I think they're independent so far, aren't they? They're standalone, but for how long? That is the question.
Yeah, and they're also a flat fee, right? I think it's not that expensive to buy it
Yeah, pretty
either.
reasonable. It's about $10, I think it is, or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty good.
We do have a question that we like to ask all of our guests, and we kind of like brushed on it a little bit before in the podcast. But Alex, do you experience creative block? And when you do, what do you do to kind of like get over it or like deal with it?
Yeah, I think all the time creative blocks there,
Yeah.
and I feel like I'm like a performing monkey because I always say this, and I cringe when I hear myself, churning it out every time. But I always say that I've found that the best time to draw for me personally, but give it a try because it might work for you, is to do it really, really late at night, just before
Oh
you fall
yeah.
asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it's good on an iPad or something, just like really dim that screen down so you're getting to that point of like real sleepiness, and then try and like get stuff down as much as you can at that point. And I find that that's when the best ideas come up. And there is a logic to that as well, apparently, that it's when the most cynical part of your brain is tired. Have you heard that as well?
That is
Oh, like the
so
judgment center?
funny
That's
that you
funny.
Yeah.
bring that up because, like we said, your work is very like surrealist in that vibe, and I've said it in the podcast a couple of times before in episodes. But that's what Dali used to do. Salvador
Um,
Dali. He would, when he was like he didn't know what to do, would go take a nap, and he would hold a key in his
yeah.
hand. And when he was right about to fall asleep, the his
He would dim his
hand
screen, and
he
he
did
would
his screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
procreate.
a, because then you enter that part of subconscious in your brain, and then like the key falling from his hand would wake him up, and then he would draw whatever he just saw. But
But he would
you're
do that
just,
every night, do you think?
I don't, I forget how the anecdote goes, but you're describing
Interesting.
something very similar where you're like trying to be very sleepy when you're working.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it is getting to that point. Maybe not to the point where you're like falling over and landing on
Yeah.
the key, but to more, just that bit where you're like super relaxed, and then I guess your sketches, well, your ideas are looser, and then yeah, I think it is all to do with that. The judgmental part of your brain is
Mhm.
tired, and then it's just like you're more accepting of that idea at the time, and then even when you look back on it the next day, you're still accepting of it.
Oh, that's
That's
so
cool.
cool. That is so
I
cool.
like that. That's
Yeah,
good
that's the
advice.
first time we've ever had this answer, so it's very exciting.
Bit of joy.
Is there anything that you want to plug? Anything that you want to tell?
I No, I think I'm good. No, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a massive honor. I've really enjoyed the live drawing experience, and I've enjoyed your drawings as well.
Those are so
You
fun.
fulfilled the prompts, so hats off.
We did it.
We did it, and
You
I've
did
been
it.
coloring your work because it's like really fun to color.
Thank you.
That's the end of this creative block. Alex, thanks so much for being our guest and sharing your story.
Cheers, guys.
And thanks to our listeners. Follow us on social media at CRTV Block, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor Clements for editing the podcast, Marco for helping us produce the show, and Ibuka for creating the short clips we've been putting out.
If you love our show, you can support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews and access to our Discord community. Click the link in the description of this episode to check out Alex's work on all social media. and to find our Patreon. I've been your host, V.
And I was Sean, aka Lord Spew. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.